Good morning, and welcome to the first webinar of 2025, which is entitled Unlocking the Future of Solar, Asset Optimization and Advanced Technology. A good pithy title to start the year off. A key determinant of the level of output from a solar farm is the health of the asset. Managing it to optimize that output over its lifetime determines the financial outcomes and ultimately the returns achieved. So it's definitely a topic of interest to your lenders and investors. The fact that we're kind of looking into this topic now really reflects the increasing maturity of the wider solar sector, with 845 megawatts of utility scale solar connected and gigawatts of solar PV awarded routes to market and res auctions, and looking at accessing the market through corporate PPAs and ultimately seeking that delivery pathway through an energized project. It's definitely a time for the industry to be considering this stage of the life cycle. After many years of focusing on the early stage development and so forth, trying to earn the right to be on the pitch. We're on the pitch now, and it's important we need to be thinking about keeping the assets in good order and all the fringe benefits. All the wider benefits that might come from that. In this session, we're going to explore the future of solar monitoring with cutting-edge technologies such as drones and digital twins. Key topics to be discussed are operating a solar farm in a world of high dispatch down. This will be presented by EnergyPro. We're going to learn about the historic challenges of dispatch down, expected future changes, and real-world strategies to plan, forecast, and mitigate the impacts of dispatch down losses. They'll be followed by MKO talking about thermal drone technology and digital twins. MKO will showcase the latest advances in drone technology, including the use of thermal imaging and digital twins for solar farm monitoring. And hopefully, at the end of that, you'll discover how these tools are revolutionising asset management and maintenance in the solar industry. So the format of the session today will be two presentations given by our august panelists. That'll be followed by a Q&A session moderated by myself. If you have any questions for our panelists, please do put them into the widget in Zoom as we go. We often find that we have more questions than we have time to get through. So just if as they're going through the slides, if there's something that's piques your interest or something you want to hear a bit more about or raises a topic for you, just put it in as we go through. Our expert panelists today are Louis O'Brien, Senior Energy Analyst with EnergyPro. His experience ranges across experimental physics, renewable systems technology, and a rather interesting detour into Irish traditional music performance. He's experienced in wind resource, energy and fault analysis, wind analysis software development, GIS, site selection development, feasibility studies, the planning process, Irish and UK legislation subsidies, SEM, ISEM, grid connection studies, and energy economics. He's also joined by his colleague, Cairo Keown, who's a renewable energy analyst with EnergyPro. She's a range of engineering experience across in a number of places, including Design Pro and Striker. From NKO, we have Pietro Salvagno. He's an environmental engineer with project environmental scientist. He heads up the drone surveying service at MKO, which supports the other planning and environmental services MKO provide. Pietro's from Italy, as you probably guessed from the name, with specialist experience in remote sensing, drone surveying, thermography, and monitoring of solar assets, which is what he will be talking about today. He's also joined by his colleague, Jack Workman. He's a landscape and visual project director at MKO. Jack typically works on the planning side of the solar industry, looking at delivery of landscape and visual impact assessments, glint and glare assessments, and graphic visualizations. Jack works collectively with Pietro on the MKO drone surveying service. So as promised, our first presentation will be from EnergyPro, and we'll hand over to them now.
Thanks, Conall. I'll just share screen here now. Thanks very much, Conall. Yeah, and thanks a million to ISEA for having us on the webinar today. My name is Louis O'Brien. I'm senior analyst, as Conall said there, with EnergyPro. I've been working with EnergyPro for about 12 years now. With me today is my colleague, Cairo. Cairo's been with EnergyPro for the last 5 5 years and is our in-house expert on dispatch down. I'll be giving the slides today. I'll give you the actual presentation, but myself and Kyra will both be answering questions or any questions you may have afterwards. So just a little bit of an intro into EnergyPro. We are the largest independent outsourced asset manager in Ireland. We've over 35 operational projects on wind, solar, battery, and battery storage. In Ireland, we have a number of sites in the UK as well. The kind of work we do is technical asset management mainly. We do commercial asset management as well, and then 24/7 control room and safety services. Myself and Cairo's main department really is the analytics side, so performance analysis, reporting, due diligence, that kind of thing. So yeah, let's get stuck into the topic, and that is dispatch down in 2025. And just a really quick intro for anyone who's not familiar with the terms. So dispatch down is where EirGrid, the transmission operator, reduced the output from renewable generators in order to, well, basically reduce the amount of power on the system. There's two categories, curtailment and constraint. Curtailment being nationwide and pro rata. It is basically where EirGrid have to balance generation and demand, and they must reduce renewable output in order to maintain system security. It's based on instantaneous power at the moment the set point is issued, and all generators, all renewable generators, wind, solar, and so on, are all treated equally. So we're all receive the same percentage point set point at any given moment. Constraint, on the other hand, is much more localized. It's due to congestion and so poor infrastructure, really, poor grid infrastructure. It'll mainly happen when EirGrid or ESB networks are doing works on the lines, so maintenance work or upgrades or and that kind of thing. These will usually lead to constraints. So we'll put some figures on it now. In 2024, there was well over 130 million euro losses across all renewable generators. If you look at the percentage, so of all the available energy from renewables, 13.7% of that was lost to this phenomenon. 4.7% of that is curtailment and 9.1% constraint. Now, if you look at the detail of that, solar is not doing too badly, actually. Solar is around 3.9% curtailment percent, and wind 5%. In constraint, solar would be 3.2%, whereas wind is at 10%. You can see why that is the case. As I'm sure most people will be aware, most of the solar plant is on the east coast, so the northeast, southeast, and with some in the Midlands. Now, of course, it's all over the country, but most of it is on the east coast, where grid infrastructure is pretty strong, and therefore constraints are not as intense. If you have a look there in Northern Ireland or the Northwest, where things are not so good, and you can see the levels of this is constraint, by the way, in the image. 27% of constraint alone in Northern Ireland is pretty atrocious, really. Northwest is at 14%, pretty bad as well. And this is mainly due to congestion on the grid and poor grid infrastructure. With Northern Ireland, it's due to, we'll see later on, but the interconnector, the Moyle interconnector. So just to point out quickly here that the figures you're looking at here on this image are for wind only, and solar will be quite different to this, but there is no solar figures available from EirGrid, so we can only use what we have there as a kind of a benchmark indicator. So what are the drivers for dispatch down? Well, the main one is MinGen, and this is where EirGrid have a requirement in order to maintain system security to have 7 synchronous generators or fossil fuel, mainly gas, generators on the system, on the transmission system, at all times. The problem is that each of these 7 have a minimum amount of generation required for them to actually operate. And if they go any lower, they must go directly to 0. So when you add up the 7 generators, it actually takes up quite a big chunk of demand that can't be met by renewables. We've also, as we've seen, the poor grid infrastructure that causes some serious constraints throughout, mainly on the West Coast, but also Northern Ireland. And that's a serious driver of dispatch down. As I just mentioned there, interconnectors have become a problem in the last 18 to 24 months. So when the interconnectors were sold to the Irish public, all those years ago, we were told that, all these renewables on the island of Ireland will be exporting most of the time, but actually that has not been the case in the last 18 months to 2 years. And you can see from this chart here that both interconnectors, the Moyle and the EWIC, have been largely importing for the last, quite a long time now. And that is due to continue. It's mainly due to prices, so market prices and the market structure of the Irish, of the SEM. So there's a lot of cheap renewables on the continent, which are being exported from the continent into the UK. And because of the price difference between Ireland, the UK, and mainland Europe, a lot of that is being imported then into Ireland as well. And the main point here is that it's offsetting Irish renewables. There's also a problem with the wind dispatch dual, poorly named, yes, and named basically designed for wind, but is now being used for solar. It's the tool that EirGrid use to control dispatch down in Ireland. It's basically they press a button and it sends out a set point across to all renewable generators. The problem is that if a set point is sent out in the middle of the night, like 2 a.m., for example, which it can happen, well, there's no generation, there's no solar at that time, obviously. And because the set point is a percentage of the available energy at that time, or at the time the first set point is issued, the available energy at that time obviously is 0 for solar, which means that they get a 0 set point. Now, if that set point isn't lifted when the sun begins to rise, then that set point will stay in place and the solar farm will get stuck at 0. You can see an example of this here for a day in August, where you can see the 0 set point in blue comes up to about 5:30 when the sun begins to rise, and the available energy from the solar farm is increasing, but there's no generation because the 0 set point is in place. And eventually the set point is lifted, but only barely. And the solar farm is stuck basically at very low output due to this phenomenon. And the good news on that front, and I'll come to this later, is that it's changing soon. So what does the future hold? So that's the current, we've just gone through the current situation. What's the near future hold for solar? So as I said, most solar development is in the northeast and the southeast coast, where historically it's been there. We've had low constraints, but this is likely to change now. As I said, the grid infrastructure is pretty strong on the east coast of Ireland, which is where the population obviously is mostly centered, and due to the strong infrastructure, there's low constraints. However, there's some serious projects coming down the line, and more power going to be added to the system. As we all know, many offshore projects are going to be brought on stream over the next few years, and the Green Link interconnector as well. Just to give you some context, there's about 540 megawatts of installed renewables in the northeast region currently. And if you even look there, just the North Irish Sea array is 500 megawatts in itself. So almost matching what's there currently. Now, the infrastructure is pretty strong. Whether it can handle all of this extra power remains to be seen. Another one is the Green Link interconnector, which is about to go live. It's already actually been in testing, and it will go. It'll be commercially operating from next week, as soon as next week. That'll be bringing in, and as we've seen with the other interconnectors, that's going to be importing a huge amount of the time. So we're fairly sure that between the Green Link interconnector and all of these new offshore wind farms, it's going to put some serious strain on the infrastructure on the east coast, and we're likely to see more constraint as a result. The good news is the clean energy package, which is about in April 2025. The first tranche of changes are about to be implemented. So we have the wind dispatch tool. As I just mentioned there, it is designed for the wind industry, but it is at last finally being changed. And that is happening as soon in April, which is great news. It'll no longer be the case that you get a set point in the middle of the night, which keeps your solar farm stuck at zero or stuck at low output throughout the day. So that's one bit of very good news for solar. Another more good news is that the battery energy storage systems will be allowed to trade in the ex-ante market for the first time. So basically, they'll be able to operate as a power station, which they haven't been able to do up until now. Beyond April, and still with the clean energy package, there's some big movement on co-location. So the 4 points here, the fact that batteries will be able to charge directly from renewable generators, the removal of the over-install limit and private wires, and sharing of the MEC on hybrid sites, it's all to do with co-location. It basically means that for the first time, and it's kind of mad that it hasn't been this case up until now, but for the first time, you'll be able to charge a battery from a solar farm. You'll be able to share an MEC limit, and you'll be able to, in fact, build your own private grid between a battery and solar farm. You'll be able to build solar with wind, build solar with batteries, as I said, or build batteries with wind as well. So it's really great news, and it's a game changer, really, co-location. What can be done? So as I was saying, and I suppose one of the main points of the entire presentation really is that constraints have not been bad, at least on the East Coast for solar up to now, but that is going to change. And it could be changing as soon as next week with the Greenlink interconnector. So what can we do to kind of help or to mitigate this? So for operators of wind farms or solar farms and battery, well, we should use the EirGrid's transmission outage program. So EirGrids issue a plan basically of when they will be doing their upgrades to lines throughout the year, and they have monthly updates on this. So we really need to use this and arrange substation maintenance and other outages to coincide with EirGrid's planned outage program. You can also track operational issues, comparing dispatch down with neighboring plants. Also, to ensure the site is responding to set points correctly and doesn't get stuck at zero. Now, that's less likely, of course, with the updates to the wind dispatch tool. However, it can still happen for various reasons. So it's always a good idea to track dispatch down and track set points really on site. For developers, we really need to consider grid layout when in site selection and when deciding where we're going to be connecting our sites. Proximity to the 220 kV lines will minimize constraints. It's always a good idea to budget conservatively for constraints. EirGrids have their own reports. They issue annual reports, ECP reports. They're not very reliable. They really are not. They generally don't consider constraints and the reality. Even the interconnector imports is not actually considered in these reports. So budget conservatively for constraint. It's a good idea to be familiar with EirGrid constraint groups. So EirGrid have these constraint groups where which experience different levels of constraints. It's based usually on geographical area, but and it means that you could have two neighboring solar farms, one in one particular constraint group and another in another constraint group, where one experiences considerably more constraints than the other. And it's it's a good idea to be familiar with these constraint groups when developing sites. You can also have bespoke analysis done to estimate future constraints, which is stuff that, we've done work like this in the past ourselves in EnergyPro, and you can, and obviously, you know, building batteries on site following the upcoming changes again is a game changer for solar and for all renewables. Industry, and I mean, this is a big one, really. We need to become an army of lobbyists, really, talking to policymakers, pushing changes. TDs, ministers, there's new government in place now. Now's the time to really start pushing the agenda. I spoke about co-location there for that being a game changer, and of course it is. But it's actually only available through this clean energy package for new sites. It's not actually available for existing projects. So that needs to be pushed and needs to change. We need more long duration storage, more battery, like as in power plant level storage, in order to basically mitigate against all of this constraint and curtailment that we're seeing. We need to reduce the need for min-gen as a nation, in the electricity grid. There are ways to do this. There are low carbon ways to do this. And you know, the final message really is, like we've been talking, all of us, is to strengthen the grid, strengthen that grid infrastructure, especially on the West Coast. And that will reduce curtailment constraint as well. So that's pretty much it. Thanks a million for listening. And myself and Cairo will be available now for any questions.
That's great, Louis and Cairo. Thanks very much. Okay, we're going to hand over then to our friends at MKO. So if Jack and Pietro want to come in and start presenting. Just another reminder, guys, that please do input any questions you may have into the Q&A widget as they go. It's just make sure they're close to the top of the queue. And I see you've got a few in already. Anyway, over to Jack and Pietro, guys.
Hi, everyone. How are you getting on? My name is Jack Workman. I'm going to give a brief background on MKO and I guess why Pietro and I are going to be chatting to you today. MKO is a planning and environmental consultancy based in Ireland. Our head offices are in Galway. Our core business would be taking projects such as solar developments through the planning system and providing the environmental and ecological impact assessments to accompany that. Over the past few years, we've broken into other areas of the industry. Pietro and I have been developing our drone surveying service over the past couple of years, mainly using drone technology to support the other internal teams here at MKO and add value to the projects we're working on. More recently, we've been using thermal sensors with the drone technology, and we've used that for the likes of supporting our ornithology teams, to analyzing heat loss in built-up urban areas, and we've been having great success using the thermal sensor on the drone for analysis monitoring of thermal solar farms and built assets. So I'm going to pass over to Pietro now, who's going to share some more details about the process and this thing that we're doing. So I'll leave it to Pietro now.
Perfect. Thanks for the introduction, Jack. And good morning, everyone. So yeah, I will briefly go through some details about the technology of thermal drones and how we offer our service and how we do the data collection and the analysis. And then we'll jump straight into an example of the main output of our service, which is a digital twin. All right. So why should thermal drones be used for solar farm monitoring? So first of all, we need to realize that solar panels are susceptible to faults and defects due to weather exposures and so precipitation and strong winds or debris, and due to long-term life cycle, long-term usage, but also because of incorrect installation in the early stages of the operational life of the solar farm. That means that faults and defects can occur pretty much, in every stage of the operations. Unfortunately, those defects and malfunctions are not visible to the naked eye, except for like very few type of anomalies and more extreme ones. But they are visible to a thermal camera because malfunctioning solar cells or solar panels still absorb solar radiation, but instead of converting this energy into electrical energy, they just eat up. So we can detect those defecting solar cells by looking at the highest temperatures with the thermal camera. And we want the thermal camera to be mounted on a drone because drones are very efficient in covering the entire site, the entire solar farm, compared to a manual inspection, on-ground survey. And they are very accurate as well. Nowadays, they are mounted with very high accurate GPS devices, so we can map and detect and locate those defects very accurately. Now, how do we do the data collection? So basically, we rely on two main disciplines. They are called photogrammetry and remote sensing. So thanks to photogrammetry, we fly above the solar farm. We collect a sequence of images with both the standard RGB and the thermal camera at the same time. And then we do a sort of stitching of all the images by polishing also from distortion due to perspective or camera lenses defects, so that we can produce outputs like 2D maps and 3D models that are also georeferenced and scaled. So you can perform measurements, you can read coordinates out of those outputs. And then we perform, through the thermal camera, remote sensing as well. So we collect information with the thermal camera, and we perform photogrammetry with the thermal images as well. So then we cross the information from both the standard and RGB and the thermal maps and outputs. And we perform an analysis and a classification of all the anomalies and the faults that we detect across the site. Now, in my experience, once we collect the data, there's always been the problem of how to share data, because during the life cycle of the solar farm and its management, you want to share data and the results of your inspection to many different people and stakeholders, having a variety of different background that might not be even technical backgrounds. And they could use different tools and different softwares. So how do we speak the same language? To answer to this need, we developed what we called a digital twin of the solar farm that we generate every time we perform an inspection. And I'm going to jump straight to showing you how it works. So first of all, I want to stress this. This is an online platform, so it can be accessed, everywhere with a simple web link. You don't need, again, any specific software or any specific technical background. So use it. It's very intuitive and easy to navigate through, as I'm going to show to you in a minute. This platform has been divided into different sections. This section shows the 2D maps of the solar farm and the results of the inspection. So in this case, the solar farm was divided into the 3 different areas. And I can navigate this environment with my mouse. So the left click to navigate through it and the scroll to zoom in or out. And these maps are generated out of very high resolution imagery from the drone. So we speak about 2 to 3 centimeter per pixel ground resolution. So you can really see every small solar cell and every small detail across the site. And you can notice that you can't really see any major defect on the solar panels. You basically, every single solar panel basically looks the same. They might have slightly different colors because of maybe reflection of clouds and different, solar radiation at that precise moment where the images was taken. But as soon as I turn the thermal layer on in this layer list function, you can see the yellow, brighter solar cells and solar panels having the highest temperatures and showcasing some sort of defects going on. So in this case, we have an entire string that is either malfunctioning or not working at all. Another string over here, we have, we might have different type of anomalies. These are bypassing diodes that are preventing those solar cells to work, and hotspots as well. So single, solar cells that are not working, or maybe broken cells, broken glass. And we generate an additional layer to showcase the anomaly classification that we perform. So to show the defects that we detect across the site, the color scale reflect the anomaly classes that we detected. And what makes this a digital twin instead of a, simple, very powerful visualization tool is that the user can interact with each single solar panel. So each single solar panel is basically a virtual replica of the real solar panel. So if I select any of these, I access and I can read immediately every single attribute related to the solar panel. So in this case, the unique ID of the solar panel, the anomaly type, all the different temperature readings, and the electrical layout as well. We usually show the coordinates of the solar panel as well. We didn't want to show them in this case, but they are available. This specific layer can be exported as a table as well as a CSV file, so you can integrate the results of the inspection to your own systems and softwares or database, and it can be filtered as well. Now I'll move on to the 3D inspection map. So this second section of the digital twin. This is basically the same environment that I've shown to you, but in a 3D environment as well. And this enables further additional analysis that can be done. I'll zoom in a little bit to show you again the resolution of the 3D model. Again, I'm not navigating through it just with my mouse. The left click to navigate and move around, and the right click to change the orientation. And there are many different tools available for the user as well. So you can measure distances and areas. You can generate profile sections on the fly. So if I select 2 points over here, I immediately generate the profile section together with a lot of, again, analytics and statistics, such as the length of the section, the maximum slope, the average slope. Another useful tool that is available in this 3D environment is the shadow simulation analysis, which might be very useful to assess how good the design and the layout of your solar farm was, especially considering all the obstruction around. So I can select any day, any daytime over the year, and I can run the simulation tool. And you can see the shadows are simulated depending on the position of the sun in that specific day and daytime of the year. And you can stop the simulation, anytime, and detect any possible, very vulnerable corner of the site. So you can see, for instance, in that little corner over here, you can see those solar panels will be covered by the shadow of this huge tree along the boundary of the solar farm, and this may lead to even severe problems over time. Another interesting section is the inspection dashboard. So this section shows different analytics and statistics that we generate out of the results of the inspection. So you have the same 2D maps that we have shown in the first section with all the different layers. But in this case, you can read also different information, such as the distribution of the types of anomalies in terms of absolute numbers or percentage as well, or the estimated yearly revenue loss due to the defects that we have classified and detect across the site. This section is completely interactive as well. So for instance, if the user wants to focus on the hotspots, you can select the hotspots and filter only the hotspots across the site. And maybe you want to focus on the most severe hotspots as well. So I guess the ones that have the highest temperature difference between the working solar cells and the malfunctioning solar cells. So I select maybe the most severe ones, and you can see the map zoom in that specific solar panel. I guess the table over here with the the most relevant information, or I can again select the solar panel itself and access and read the information and the attributes of the solar panel. So again, this is completely interactive and can really enhance the maintenance activities, especially if you imagine like technicians and operators going to the site and reading the results of the inspection, like in place while they're doing the inspection and reading the coordinates of the solar panels they want to replace, for instance. We generate more traditional outputs as well that are available in this very platform. So the inspection report, so a PDF report with all the details of the defects detected during the inspection and the original images as well. You can read this report in this web platform or download it as well. And we generate the inspection layout as well. So we generate a vector file representing the layout of the solar farm, which may be especially useful, in later stages, in later years over the operational life of the solar farm, especially after revamping activities or replacing activities, when the real layout of the solar panels may change over time, but you don't keep track of it. And we also overlay the results of the anomaly classification. So you can see the solar panels that have been classified as malfunctioning with different anomalies as well. So again, this can be read in this online platform or downloaded here. Yeah, and that was pretty much everything for me. I want to stress again, this is an online platform, so we can manage all the sharing options as we want. So you may receive these online platform after the inspection, and you can then share yourself this platform to other stakeholders, to your clients, to asset managers and other actors as well. And yeah, you can imagine this platform can be expanded in space in terms of adding more solar farms of your portfolio to this very same environment. Or over time, if we perform, multiple inspections in different years or different time of the years of the same solar farm, we can then add them in additional layers to this very same database, really. And also, perform additional analytics such as, detecting trends and the evolution of the defects over time. So yeah, thank you very much for your attention. I'm sorry I've rushed through everything.
Great.
Hopefully there will be many questions, so I can speak more in details about all of this. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Pietro, and thanks, Jack. All right, well, invite back in Louis and Cairo. And while they're coming in, the questions have been coming in thick and fast, which is great. Keep them coming. And might start with our friend at MKO. Suppose Louis and gave us kind of a sense of the kind of materiality of this and like future where the potential exposure is. I suppose obviously you've got a use case in the online platform that you've just shared with us. Question really how common is it to find issues? Like is it like if you put if the drone goes up and takes the high quality imagery of every solar farm in the country, will every one of them have hotspots and bits and pieces? Will it be 1 in 10? Kind of give a sense of kind of like how common this is, just for people.
Yeah, that's a great question. So in my experience, I've never seen a solar farm without issues. And so they are very common. Again, they can be that like the reason behind those defects and faults may be different, maybe long-term usage or some defects in the manufacturing or some some incorrect installation. So you can have defects, again, in the very early stages of the solar farm, of the operational life of the solar farm, or because of long-term usage. So after a while, after a few years, you can have defects occurring because of material consumption and exposure to the weather. Overall, I've seen the example that I've shown to you was an inspection that we performed over a brand new solar farm, and we still detected a lot of defects, as you could see. In my experience, like defects can take up to 20% of the overall expected revenue of the revenue and energy yield, of course, of the solar farm. Usually it goes from 5 to 10% of the solar farm performance overall. So we usually recommend at least one thermal inspection every year, possibly two, maybe in different time of the year. But yeah, very common overall.
Great, that's helpful. That was actually one of the questions we had already. How frequently would you recommend? That's great. Okay, and just in terms of just giving a sense of that, because we saw you presented different kinds of data on hotspots and kind of big differences, whole strings, individual cells. I suppose like just a sense of like, I'm guessing the answer may depend, but the question we have is, would a hotspot on a solar panel take down a whole string?
Yeah, that's a very good question as well. So yes, it can. The short answer is yes. Now it depends, as you were mentioning, it depends on how severe the hotspot is, and also it depends on the root cause that is causing the hotspots. Because like what we call the hotspot is basically the symptom of something that is wrong in the solar cells out of the solar panel. But we can't be sure 100% of the root cause if not looking at the standard RGB images, which is something that we do, or by sending someone on the ground. And for some very severe root cause or severe hotspot overall, over time, it can cause the bypass diodes to shut down basically the string of solar cells. And if there are many, again, bypass diodes over the same string, the string can be shut down as well. So yeah, over time, as the defects increases, both in terms of severity and in numbers, you can see many strings shut down because of those. Yeah.
Thank you. Got kind of a couple ones for EnergyPro. As you can imagine, as soon as you mention the word constraint and curtailment, people get very excited. So we have a few different questions, but one maybe it might be worth just giving people a very quick summary on where the compensation for dispatch down. Just very quick, if you if that's possible. And then we can kind of maybe take it from there.
I might hand over to Cairo for that one.
Yeah, so look, it's a bit of a complicated topic, and there's changes coming in that regard as well. At the moment, firm sites receive, in theory, constraint compensation. There's a couple of caveats on that as well. And a firm site there, that's if you're not familiar with the term, a condition of your grid connection agreement, linked to, kind of what EirGrid and ESBN see as the resilience or capacity of the grid at the time of your grid connection offer. So your site will either be firm or non-firm. And if you have firm access at the moment, in theory, you can receive a certain amount of constrained compensation if you if you do everything right in terms of your trading, and then again, depending on your PPA agreement. So yeah, in theory, there's constrained compensation available. Part of the clean energy package is requiring at an EU level to also bring in curtailment compensation. I think this one is even more of a contentious topic at the moment. There's an ongoing court case between some big names in the industry and the CRU due to their interpretation of this, where effectively the industry is not at all happy with the level of compensation that the CRU's interpretation of the clean energy package would provide. So that, I believe, has just been referred to the European High Court now. So yes, complicated topic there as well. But yeah, in theory, again, firm sites should in future be receiving curtailment compensation, and I believe there will be some amount of backdating in that, pending the court case decision there.
Definitely done. Okay, so we have a few interesting questions about people who are, I suppose, the kind of issue you just raised there, Cairo, as well, is between what's written in the regulations, what seems to happen in practice, and the kind of gap between them. We have one query from someone talking about finding dispatch down on one solar farm versus its neighbours, and asking the question, I suppose, Louis, you kind of raised it. Do you find differences between a project and its neighbours, and what are the causes? And separately, a linked kind of question for someone who says they understand curtailment is intended to be pro rata, but they find set points at different solar sites can vary widely, and asking, do you guys encounter this as well?
Yeah,
Yeah.
on the
Sorry, Louis.
well, no, fire away, Cairo. Go for it.
Yeah, we do see this. This is related to the issues with the wind dispatch tool that Louis brought up. That essentially when dispatch down is first enabled across the country, and the first set point is generated, EirGrid take an available energy figure. So depending on how much available power you have on your renewable generator, whether that's wind or solar, EirGrid sort of store that piece of information, and then they give out set points pro rata to that. But if you have, for example, if you're a bit further north than another solar site, and the sun rises just a little bit later, or sorry, further east, the sun rises just a little bit later, you could be very unlucky and end up that you're still ramping up. It's an issue with wind as well, if you've got a wind front coming in. So basically, yeah, it's in theory pro rata, at least that first one, but there's lots of different factors. If you have a string down on your solar site when the set point is issued, that's obviously affecting your available energy as well. So you need to look at how much each site had available when the set point was calculated. And there's a bit of, I think, a rule of thumb there is that it takes about 15 minutes for EirGrid to calculate everything and issue out those set points. So if you look at your available power 15 minutes before you received your first set point, compare that to a neighbouring site, you'll see in theory, in practice, if everything's gone to plan, it'll be pro rata to that availability figure. But yeah, as things develop, then one site could ramp up, one site could ramp down a bit, and because your subsequent set points are all based on that initial available energy, you could basically have a reverse where one site is near capacity and one site's at very low generation. When the first one comes on, those could reverse, but you're actually still locked in based on those original. And so this site, although it's got really low available energy, is being allocated set points pro rata to that higher value that it had earlier. And your site now has way more available energy, but it's still being given pro rata to that first one.
Well, it's nice and intuitive. Like. Okay. I have a practical question on drones, and then a more commercial question. So the first one really is around how high does the drone need to fly, particularly to do a thermal scan over a large spatial area? And I suppose the other question, which might be one more for you, Jack, was in terms of the interested audience for the online tool. They think O&M providers, asset owners. Where are you seeing the kind of interest at the moment? So if Pietro wants to shoot first, and then you, Jack.
Yeah, so I'll say overall the thermal drones have to fly maybe between 50 and 80 meters above the site. It depends on the drone model and on ultimately on the resolution that we want to have on the ground. So we want to think more about the resolution, because you want to be able to actually see and detect the defects over the solar panels. And usually we want to reach between 2 and 4 centimeter per pixel ground resolution on the standard RGB camera, and no more than 6 centimeter per pixel ground resolution on the thermal camera. So you can really be able to see and distinguish every single solar cell over your solar panels.
I can jump in there for the second question. So far, since we've been providing this service, it's mainly been for the asset managers or the developers of the solar assets. That might be a result of just our existing relationships with these clients through taking their projects through planning. We imagine O&Ms are going to find this really valuable, and obviously would be open to doing that on their behalf. But yeah, at the moment, mainly the asset owners at this stage. I don't know, Pietro has quite extensive experience doing this in Italy, so maybe, I don't know what, and they would have, I guess, a bit more of a mature built solar in terms of solar infrastructure. So I don't know, he might be able to talk to that as to where they are in Europe.
Yeah, I'd say by experience, operation and management companies are the ones that are more interested into the service, obviously, but asset managers and solar farm owners might be interested as well, to check on the health status of the solar farm overall, or to check on maintenance activities that have been performed. So maybe you want to have a frame of the health status of the solar farm before the maintenance and maybe another one after the maintenance, so you can compare the two situations. But again, for instance, we had one project in Italy where we worked together with the fire corps to map the health status of solar farms on the rooftop of buildings, so to assess the fire risk over the buildings. So just to mention, like kind of like an outlier example to say that, you know, the clients and the users of the solar online platform may be, you know, a lot and coming from different backgrounds, really.
Yeah, we actually done this service for a client in Ireland where, you know, it was a brand new solar farm. So whilst it's been constructed under warranty, it's almost like a snag list to get everything fully operational within the warranty of that construction process. So, you know, there's another use case for it as well. So
Really helpful. Thank you. One more quick question, and then I'm going to ask you all for your like one takeaway for the audience, because we've only got a few minutes left. It's flown by. Probably for our friends at EnergyPro, the question came in: what would be the best way to identify unfair dispatch down and claim compensations back? This sounds like somebody who's had a bit of a tough experience recently.
Yeah, so there's no official mechanism for actually, you know, claiming back dispatch down that's been applied unfairly. Obviously a bit of a can of worms if we go into the topic of what's fair. Certainly from everyone's perspective, you know, but there's no official mechanisms. But what you really need to be doing is mitigation. So looking at other sites, understanding the constraint groups that Louis mentioned earlier, because you can be in a situation where, you know, a neighboring site is actually in a different constraint group than you. But certainly within that constraint group, identifying other dispatchable sites in that constraint group and comparing side by side, and looking at, yeah, have you had the same kind of duration of curtailment and constraint events? Are you actually being given pro rata? Because oftentimes you've got a controllability issue if that's not the case. So identifying that and trying to rectify that as soon as possible.
So again, suggest there might be some good business there for MKO. For MKO services might be good. Check out the asset is in good order. Okay, listen, guys, thank you so much. I suppose, going to ask every one of you if you're quick, the one thing you'd like people to take away from this, and I'll start with our last speaker, Cairo.
Yeah, I suppose my main point that I'd like to stress, I suppose, is really that we are going to see a massive change in constraints in that solar is experiencing in the next few years. I think it's nearly guaranteed. So, you know, be budgeting for that, but also don't take it lying down. Be fighting for better, greater infrastructure, and you know, account for it, but don't accept it either.
Louis? Or...
Yeah, we talked about the clean energy package and the wind dispatch tool. That's actually and the dispatch down, the curtailment. A lot of that will actually be changing in April. It's good news. And you know that like there is problems. There's going to be problems with constraints over the coming years, indeed. But it's not all bad news, and you know, the clean energy package, I think on the whole is a really good thing, and you know, co-location is going to be a big thing going forward.
Right. Pietro.
Yeah, so yeah, I'd say overall this webinar was very interesting for me as well, in from EnergyPro. I'd say overall our thermal drone inspection service is up and running, and you know, again, it's a very useful service to detect defects and faults across the solar farm, even if it's, you know, just became operational recently. We do perform construction monitoring as well.
Yeah, I said one thing, Pietro.
Sorry.
Thank you.
Go over. So
Jack.
That's
it. Yeah, I'll echo Pietro's sentiments. As really interesting webinar, and thanks to EnergyPro for sharing their thing there. Yeah, look, it's just really exciting for us with, you know, leveraging thermal drone technology, remote sensing in general, whether it's for assessing solar assets or many other diverse range of applications. So yeah, just exciting time, and thanks everyone for listening and attending, and thanks Conall and ISEA for organising.
Thank you, Jack. So it falls to me to say thank you to our presenters, Louis, Cairo, Pietro, and Jack. Thank you for your attention, questions, and continued support. Do please keep an eye on our website, members area, social media, and email for information on our next webinar. Also, if you have ideas for future webinars or want to get involved in one of our working groups, please do reach out. We also need the help. The slides from today should soon be available. Have a great day, and we'll see you all again next month. Slán.